The millionaire found a pregnant woman crying in the rain in front of a courthouse. Upon discovering that she was fighting for custody of the baby, he decided to help her and ended up finding something he never had: a family. In bustling Manhattan, Michael Richardson was going through another typical day in his office in the penthouse of the building that housed Richardson Investments. At 42, he ran a financial empire built with relentless determination. But something always slipped through his fingers, a void that no professional achievement could fill. That October afternoon, the heavy clouds heralded an impending storm. Michael watched the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette reflected in the glass as he signed the last documents of the day. Patricia, his assistant for over a decade, entered the room with precise steps. "Mr. Richardson, your last meeting of the day has been canceled. Attorney Martinez had an emergency in court." Michael nodded, his brown eyes fixed on the cityscape. "Any other appointments?" "No, sir. You're free to go early today." Something in Patricia's tone made him turn away. She was watching him with that motherly look she sometimes let slip, despite her professionalism. "Anything else, Patricia? 10 years ago today, your mother—" She hesitated, but continued softly. "I thought you might want to know." The weight of that date hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. 10 years since he had lost the only family he had. His father had left when he was still a child, and his mother, Rose, raised him alone, working 2 jobs. Her loss was the catalyst that turned him into the focused and, some would say, cold man he had become. "Thank you for remembering, Patricia. You can go home." Minutes later, Michael left the building, opting to walk a few blocks before picking up his car from the garage. The rain was starting to fall, first in soft drops, then in thick curtains that washed the streets of Manhattan. It was when he passed in front of the Manhattan Superior Court that he saw her. A young woman sat on the steps, only partially protected by the marquee, her hands embracing a visibly pregnant belly. She was soaking wet and crying in a restrained manner, as if trying to hide her pain from the world. Michael hesitated. Normally, he would have walked straight past. New York had thousands of sad stories, and he had learned to shield himself from them. But something about that scene made him stop. Maybe it was the date, maybe it was the memory of his own mother struggling alone to raise him. "Ma'am," he approached, extending his umbrella over her. "Do you need any help?" The woman raised her face, revealing blue eyes marked by crying and exhaustion. She must have been no more than 30 years old. I'm fine," she replied automatically, but her shaky voice betrayed her. "Forgive me, but you don't look well." Michael sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm Michael Richardson. Can I help you in any way?" She hesitated, studying his face for a moment. "My name is Rachel Bennett." She ran a hand over her wet face. "I've just come out of a hearing. I'm fighting for custody of my baby." "What do you mean?" "The father, he wants to take custody as soon as the baby is born. He's got lots of money, the best lawyers." Rachel swallowed. "I only have a public lawyer who has barely looked at my case. I just found out that he didn't even file important documents on time." Michael felt something awaken inside him, a mixture of indignation and purpose that he hadn't experienced for years. "Why does he want to take away custody?" "He says I can't raise a child. I lost my job when the company closed. I'm still looking for something new." She ran her hand over her belly protectively. "But I love this baby more than anything. It's not fair that just because he has money—" Michael took out his business card and handed it to her. "I know the best family lawyers in town. If you allow me, I can help." Rachel looked at the card, her eyes widening as she recognized the name. I couldn't afford. I'm not offering for money, Rachel. Sometimes you just have to do the right thing." Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Rachel shuddered. Michael stood up, holding out his hand. "Let's get out of this rain. We can talk more about your situation in a cafe nearby. What do you say?" Rachel hesitated for a moment, then accepted his hand. As they walked through the rain, Michael felt something change inside him. For years, he had built his empire focusing only on numbers and results. Now, for the first time in a long time, he felt he could do something truly meaningful. "You know," said Rachel as they walked into the cafe, "I thought today was the worst day of my life, But maybe. Sometimes the days that seem the worst bring the most important changes, Michael added, remembering his mother. The cafe was warm and welcoming, a refuge from the storm outside. As they sat at a discreet table in the back, Michael realized that this chance encounter could change not only Rachel's life, but his own. Sometimes, he thought, fate has curious ways of showing us the way back to our humanity. Magnolia's Cafe, on the corner of the Courthouse, was one of those establishments that preserved the atmosphere of old New York. Michael led Rachel to a discreet table at the back, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft lighting created a cozy atmosphere, contrasting with the storm that was battering the windows. "First, you need to warm up," said Michael, signaling to the waitress. "A chamomile tea for you and a black coffee for me, please." Rachel was still shivering slightly, both from the cold and the excitement of the day. Her blue eyes, although tired, held a determination that Michael immediately recognized as the same look his mother had when facing adversity. "Tell me more about your situation," Michael asked, his professional tone softened by genuine concern. "How did all this start?" Rachel settled into her chair, running her hand over her 6-month-old belly. "I met James Bennett at a corporate party a year ago. He's the CEO of Bennett Technologies. At first, it was a fairy tale of expensive dinners, trips, gifts." She paused when the waitress brought the drinks. "But when I found out I was pregnant, everything changed." Michael watched as she wrapped her hands around the teacup, seeking warmth. "What do you mean?" "James," he was furious. "He said I'd planned the whole thing, that it was a scam." Rachel swallowed. "He offered me money, well, to terminate the pregnancy. When I refused, he showed his true face." The story began to unfold, revealing layers of manipulation and power that Michael knew well from the corporate world. James Bennett had used his influence to make Rachel lose her job at the marketing company where she worked, claiming a conflict of interest. Then he began a campaign to destroy her professional reputation. "Now he wants full custody," Rachel continued, her voice shaking. "His lawyers argue that I'm emotionally unstable and financially incapable. Try to paint me as an opportunist." Michael felt a familiar indignation rise up inside him. "Do you have any documentation? Messages, emails, anything to prove the harassment?" Rachel nodded, pulling a phone out of her purse. "I've kept everything. Every message, every email. Even when he offered money too." Her voice faltered. "That's excellent." Michael leaned forward. "Rachel, I know James Bennett. Our companies have done business. And I also know his reputation behind the scenes." Rachel's eyes widened. "You know him? Enough to know that he's done this before." Michael picked up his own phone, typing quickly. "Patricia, I need you to do some thorough research on James Bennett. Focus on previous prosecutions, especially family cases." "Yes, right now." Turning his attention to Rachel, Michael continued, "I'll be blunt. I want to help you, not just with lawyers, but with everything you need to make sure your son stays with you." "Why?" The question came out almost in a whisper. "Why do you care?" Michael was silent for a moment, watching the rain through the window. "My mother raised me alone. Today is exactly 10 years since she passed away." He looked back at Rachel. "She always said that sometimes we need to be the help we wish we'd received." Tears began to fall silently down Rachel's face. "I can't accept." "You can and you will," Michael interrupted gently. "First thing tomorrow, we're meeting Catherine Martinez. She's the best family lawyer I know." Michael's phone vibrated with a message from Patricia. His eyes quickly scanned the text, and a serious smile formed on his lips. "As I suspected, James Bennett has a pattern. 3 other similar cases in the last 5 years, all resolved with confidential settlements." He looked at Rachel. "That changes everything." "What do you mean?" "It means we can not only defend his right to custody, but expose his pattern of behavior. Bennett may be rich and powerful, but he has a lot to lose if this goes public." Rachel put her cup down on the table, her hands still shaking. "I'm scared. He has so much power." "And now you have someone on your side who knows this game," Michael replied firmly. "First rule of the corporate world: everyone has a weakness. And James Bennett has just found his." The rest of the afternoon passed with Michael and Rachel strategizing. He insisted on arranging a secure apartment for her, arguing that it would be crucial to the custody process to have a fixed and suitable address. He also ensured that she would have access to the best medical care for the remainder of her pregnancy. When they finally left the cafe, the rain had subsided to a fine drizzle. Michael called his driver to take Rachel to her hotel, where she would collect her belongings before moving into her new apartment. "Michael," she called out before getting into the car, "how can I ever thank you?" He smiled, remembering his mother again. "Be to your son what my mother was to me. That's all the thanks I need." As he watched the car drive away, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced for a long time: purpose. For years, he had built his empire focusing only on numbers and acquisitions. Now, for the first time in a decade, he felt he was truly honoring his mother's legacy. His phone rang, and it was Patricia again, with more information about Bennett. The battle was just beginning, but Michael Richardson was ready for it. This time, it wasn't just about business. It was about making a difference in someone's life, about being the kind of person his mother had always known he could be. The next morning, the office of lawyer Catherine Martinez emanated an atmosphere of professional elegance. Michael and Rachel were waiting in the meeting room, where the panoramic view of Manhattan served as a backdrop for the important conversation that was about to take place. Catherine entered the room with the confident poise that had made her legendary in the New York courts. At 55, her gray hair and elegant bearing conveyed a natural authority that made Rachel sit up straighter in her chair. "Michael," Catherine greeted with a knowing smile, "when you called me last night, I confess I was intrigued." Her gaze turned to Rachel. "Ms. Bennett, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Actually," Rachel hesitated, "I prefer to use my maiden name, Collins." "Excellent decision," Catherine nodded, opening her briefcase. "Michael sent me the preliminary documents last night. I spent a few hours reviewing your case, and we have a lot of work ahead of us." Michael watched as Catherine began to organize a series of documents on the table. Rachel looked simultaneously intimidated and hopeful, her hands resting protectively on her belly. "First," Catherine began, "we need to establish a counterattack to the narrative that James Bennett is constructing. He's trying to paint you as emotionally unstable and financially irresponsible, correct?" Rachel nodded. He used his contacts to make me lose my job. Then he started spreading rumors about me on the market." "That's bullying and defamation," Catherine declared, taking notes. "Michael informed me about the other similar cases involving Bennett. This establishes a pattern of behavior that we can use to our advantage." Michael leaned forward. "Catherine, I want you to use all the resources necessary in this case. My team is already investigating Bennett's other victims." "Excellent," Catherine smiled. "Now, Rachel, I need you to tell me everything, right from the start. Every detail matters." Over the next hour, Rachel revealed her full story. Her relationship with Bennett had started promisingly, but soon showed worrying signs of control and manipulation. When her pregnancy was discovered, the mask dropped completely. "He even threatened my family," Rachel revealed, her hands shaking. "He said that if I didn't do what he wanted, he'd make sure my parents lost everything." Michael felt his blood boil. It was the kind of tactic he knew well from the corporate world, but to see it applied in this way disgusted him to the core. "Do we have any messages proving these threats?" Catherine asked. "Yes, I've kept everything," Rachel confirmed. "Some of the threats were made in person, but I have audio recordings of 2 meetings." Catherine smiled for the first time. "That's pure gold, Rachel. Bennett is so used to getting what he wants that he's gotten careless. What do we do now?" Michael asked, his corporate strategist instincts kicking in. "First, let's ensure Rachel's safety," Catherine replied. "Michael, that apartment you provided was an excellent idea. Rachel, from now on, you are not to have any direct contact with Bennett. All communication will be through my office." "What about the custody proceedings?" Rachel asked, the concern evident in her voice. "We'll turn the tables," Catherine assured her. "Bennett is using his financial influence as a weapon, but we can use that against him. A man who threatens a pregnant woman and her family is in no moral position to question anyone's ability as a father." Michael watched as Catherine continued to outline her strategy. It was impressive to see how she turned every apparent weakness into a potential advantage. "Rachel," Michael interrupted gently, "there's something else I need to discuss with you." He exchanged a glance with Catherine before continuing. I want to offer you a position at Richardson Investments. Rachel blinked, surprised. What? We need someone with your experience in digital marketing. I've seen your portfolio, and you're exactly what our communications department needs. But it wouldn't be that, it wouldn't seem. Manipulation? Catherine added. Don't worry, we'll document the entire hiring process properly. Your experience and qualifications speak for themselves. It just neutralizes the narrative of financial instability that Bennett is trying to build. Rachel took a deep breath, processing everything. Why are you doing all this for me? Michael and Catherine exchanged another look. It was Catherine who answered. Because sometimes we need to fight not just for justice, but for the right person. And believe me, Rachel, you are the right person in this battle. The rest of the meeting was dedicated to defining the next steps. Catherine assigned a dedicated team to the case and established an aggressive timeline for action. Michael ensured that all the necessary resources were available. When they finally left the office, the afternoon sun was painting Manhattan in golden hues. Rachel looked simultaneously exhausted and invigorated. Michael, she called out as they waited for the elevator. About the job, you start on Monday, he replied with a smile. And it's not charity, Rachel. It's an investment in talent. In the elevator, Michael reflected on how his life had changed in just 24 hours. The emptiness he had been carrying around for so long was beginning to be filled with something new. Purpose. His mother always said that true wealth lies in making a difference in the lives of others. You know, Rachel said softly, yesterday I was crying in the rain, without hope. Today, she smiled, touching her belly. Today I feel like I can really fight for both of us. Michael nodded. Feeling a familiar emotion tightened his chest. Sometimes, he replied, remembering his mother's words, our greatest strength comes from the very moments when we think we're weakest. The elevator reached the first floor, its doors opening onto a new chapter in the lives of everyone involved. The battle had only just begun, but now, for the first time, the odds were starting to shift. The week that followed was a whirlwind of activity. Rachel had settled into her new apartment and started her job at Richardson Investments, while Catherine and her team were meticulously building the case against James Bennett. Michael, for his part, remained vigilant, coordinating every aspect of the situation with the precision that had made him famous in the business world. It was a Wednesday when Bennett's first real provocation arrived. Michael was in his office when Patricia rushed in, her normally calm countenance visibly upset. Mr. Richardson, James Bennett is in the lobby. He demands to speak to you. Michael adjusted his tie, a cold smile forming on his lips. Send him up. And Patricia, please let Catherine Martinez know. She'll want to know about this. Minutes later, James Bennett burst through the office door. Tall, well-dressed, and with an air of arrogance that Michael recognized well, it was the same one he saw in the mirror years ago, before his mother's death changed his outlook on life. Richardson, Bennett practically spat out the words. What the hell do you think you're doing? Michael remained seated, his calculated calm serving as the first provocation. James, please sit down. Would you like some coffee? Don't give me that hospitality shit, Bennett growled. You hired Rachel. You're paying her lawyers. Why is that? What's in it for you? Maybe I just don't like seeing powerful people abusing their position, Michael replied, his voice retaining a studied serenity. Or maybe I just recognize talent when I see it. Bennett leaned across the table, trying to use his height as intimidation. Listen to me, Richardson. You have no idea who you're messing with. On the contrary, Michael finally stood up, meeting Bennett's gaze. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. 3 previous cases, all involving pregnant women, all resolved with confidential settlements. Your pattern is quite predictable, James. Bennett's face paled slightly. You have no proof of anything. Actually, I do, Michael smiled, opening a folder on his desk. Melissa Thompson, 2018. Sarah Williams, 2020. And of course, Jennifer Parker, 2021. All with stories remarkably similar to Rachel's. That's impossible. Those agreements were confidential? Michael added. Yes, they were. But you know, James, money opens a lot of doors. And guess what? I have more money than you. Bennett took a step back, his arrogance giving way to visible concern. What do you want? Me? Nothing. But Rachel? She just wants to raise her son in peace. No harassment, no threats, no dirty games. That bitch is trying to destroy me. The office door opened, revealing Catherine Martinez with her phone in hand. Interesting choice of words, Mr. Bennett. I'm glad I recorded that. Bennett spun around, his face now red with anger. That's illegal. New York is a unilateral consent state for recordings, Catherine replied calmly. And this is a private office with clear warnings about monitoring. But go on, please. Were you saying something about Rachel? Michael watched the transformation on Bennett's face from anger to fear, and finally to the calculated composure that men like him used as a last defense. This isn't over, Bennett declared, heading for the door. You're right, Michael agreed. But it will be over soon, and not the way you planned. After Bennett left, Catherine turned to Michael. That was interesting. He's desperate, Michael observed. And desperate people make mistakes. We need to warn Rachel. Catherine began typing on her phone. Bennett might try something. I've already arranged security for her, Michael assured her. Discreetly, of course. I don't want her to feel like a prisoner. Catherine studied Michael for a moment. You know, when you came to me about this case, I thought it was just another businessman trying to do his good deed for the day. But it's more than that, isn't it? Michael walked over to the window, watching the city below. My mother used to say that wealth without purpose is just numbers in a bank account. It took me a long time to understand that. And now? Now I understand that sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be. He turned to Catherine. Rachel isn't just another case. It's a chance to make a real difference, to stop one more person being crushed by people like Bennett, like I used to be. Catherine's phone rang. It was her team with news. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a satisfied smile. 2 of Bennett's former victims have agreed to testify, she announced. Looks like his money didn't buy as much silence as he thought. Excellent, Michael nodded. And Rachel? She's safe at work. Her security team reports that Bennett has been keeping his distance. Michael grabbed his jacket. I'm going to visit her in the marketing department. After tonight's show, she needs to know she's not alone. As he rode down in the elevator, Michael reflected on how his life had changed over the last few weeks. The emptiness he had carried for so long was beginning to be filled with something more meaningful than profits and acquisitions. His phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. I heard about Bennett's visit. Are you okay? Michael smiled, typing his reply. Perfectly. And you? Scared, but strong. Thanks for everything, Michael. The elevator doors opened, and Michael felt a renewed determination. The battle with Bennett was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, he knew exactly what he was fighting for. It wasn't just for Rachel or their baby. It was for the person his mother had always known he could be. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Bennett, Michael watched from the doorway of the marketing department as Rachel conducted a presentation to the team. It was impressive how quickly she had adapted, coming up with innovative ideas and earning the respect of her colleagues in her own right. She's a natural at it, commented Patricia, who had quietly joined him. The team loves her. Michael nodded, a discreet smile on his lips. Sometimes I wonder who's helping whom in this story. The presentation ended to enthusiastic applause. Rachel placed her hands on her 7-month belly, a gesture that had become familiar, and smiled at the team. When her eyes met Michael's at the door, he nodded slightly. Mr. Richardson, she approached after the meeting had dispersed. I didn't know you were watching. Michael, he corrected for the 100th time. And I've come to invite you to lunch. Catherine has some news about the case. The restaurant they chose was on the top floor of the Richardson building, with a panoramic view of Central Park. Catherine was already waiting for them at a discreet table, a thick briefcase on the white tablecloth. Good news, Catherine announced as soon as they sat down. Melissa Thompson has agreed not only to testify, but also to provide all the documentation for her case against Bennett. Rachel leaned forward, interested. What does that mean for us? It means that we've established a clear pattern of behavior, Catherine explained, opening the folder. Bennett used almost identical tactics in every case: social isolation, financial pressure, veiled threats to the family. Michael watched as Catherine detailed the similarities between the cases. Rachel alternated between expressions of shock and relief as she realized that she was not alone in her experience. "But there's something else," Catherine continued, her tone changing subtly. "We've discovered why Bennett is so obsessed with the paternity issue." "What do you mean?" Michael asked, noticing the sudden tension in Catherine's shoulders. His father, William Bennett, had a specific clause in his will. Most of the shares in Bennett Technologies can only be controlled by direct heirs of Bennett blood. Rachel put down her cutlery, understanding. "He's not really interested in the baby." "No," Catherine confirmed. "It's about corporate control. If his son is officially recognized as the Bennett heir, that significantly alters the distribution of power in the company." Michael felt a familiar indignation rise in his chest. "He's using a child as a piece in a corporate game." "Exactly," Catherine nodded. "And there's more. Bennett has a younger brother who is contesting some corporate decisions. With an heir on the way, the power dynamic changes completely." Rachel ran her hand over her belly, her face pale. "My baby has never been anything but a threat or an opportunity for him." Michael instinctively reached for Rachel's hand on the table. "Let's not allow him to turn your son into a corporate chess piece." The moment was interrupted by a sharp ring from Catherine's phone. She answered quickly, her face changing expression as she listened. "I see. Yes, keep me informed." She hung up, her countenance serious. "Bennett is calling an extraordinary meeting of the company's board for tomorrow." "Why?" Rachel asked, although her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "He's going to try to consolidate his power before the baby is born," Michael deduced. "He probably wants to change something in the company's bylaws." Catherine nodded. "We need to act fast. If he manages to change the rules of succession now." "He won't," Michael interrupted, his tone determined. "Patricia, I need you to get in touch with Martin Sean." Patricia, who had been discreetly standing nearby, already had her phone in hand. "The corporate law specialist?" "Exactly. Tell him I need him tonight." Rachel watched the movement with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "Michael, you're already doing so much." "Rachel," he turned to her, his voice soft but firm. "When I met you on that courthouse staircase, something changed in me. I'm not just fighting Bennett. I'm fighting for something I lost a long time ago. A sense of family." The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Catherine sniffled softly, breaking the moment. "Well, we have work to do. Rachel, I need you to come to my office this afternoon. We're going to prepare your formal statement about Bennett's threats." As Catherine organized the next steps, Michael noticed that Rachel was watching him with a peculiar expression. "Is there a problem?" he asked softly. "No," she smiled, her eyes shining with restrained tears. "It's just, you mentioned family. You know, ever since I lost my parents in the accident 2 years ago, I thought I'd never have that again. And now..." Michael felt something tighten in his chest. He also knew this loneliness well, this emptiness that no amount of professional success could fill. "Sometimes," he replied, remembering his mother's words, "family isn't just about blood. It's about people who choose to stay by your side, no matter what." The rest of the lunch was dedicated to strategies and plans, but something had subtly changed. Between the legal and corporate discussions, something was being born that neither of them had planned for. A sense of belonging, a connection that went beyond the situation that had initially brought them together. When they finally said goodbye, Michael watched Rachel return to the marketing department, her posture more confident than ever. Patricia, always perceptive, commented softly, "You know, Mr. Richardson, your mother would be proud." Michael smiled, unconsciously touching the watch that had belonged to Rose. "Yes, Patricia, I think she would be." The battle was far from over, but now it was about much more than justice or revenge. It was about protecting something precious that was being born. Not just a baby, but a family built in the most unexpected circumstances. The morning of the Bennett Technologies board meeting dawned with a palpable tension in the air. Michael had spent the night in his office with Martin Sean, a specialist in corporate law, studying every detail of the company's bylaws and preparing his strategy. "The succession clause is quite clear," Martin explained, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the documents for the 10th time. "Majority control must remain with direct heirs of Bennett blood." Michael nodded. watching the city awaken through the windows of his office. And Bennett is trying to change that before the baby is born. Exactly. But there's something interesting here. Martin extracted a yellow document from his briefcase. This is the original version of the statute, signed by William Bennett in 1975. There's an additional clause that was conveniently omitted from the most recent versions. Michael's interest was immediately piqued. What kind of clause? One that states that any attempt to change the rules of succession must be unanimously approved by all living heirs of Bennett blood, including minors and unborn children with proven paternity. A slow smile formed on Michael's lips. That changes everything. His phone vibrated, and it was Catherine. "Michael, we have a situation. One of Bennett's ex-girlfriends, Jennifer Parker, was found dead in his apartment." Michael's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Apparently, an overdose. But the timing is very convenient. She was due to testify next week." Michael felt his stomach turn. "Is Rachel safe?" "Yes, the security team is with her. But that's not all. Jennifer left a letter and recordings. Lots of recordings. I'm going to your office now." In Catherine's office, Rachel was already waiting for them, her face pale but determined. Jennifer Parker's recordings revealed a disturbing pattern of threats and manipulation on Bennett's part. "He's a monster," Rachel whispered, stroking her belly protectively after they listened to the third recording. "He was," Catherine corrected. "Now we have hard evidence. Jennifer Parker may be dead, but her voice will finally be heard." Michael watched Rachel, noticing how she looked simultaneously frightened and resolute. "Are you all right?" "No," she admitted with a small, sad smile. "But I'm staying. It's not just for me now." Michael's phone rang, and it was Patricia. "Mr. Richardson, the Bennett Technologies board meeting will start in an hour." "Good. Patricia, I need you to activate our press contact. It's time to change the game." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" "Bennett wants to play dirty. We can play too." Michael turned to Rachel. "But only if you agree. This will expose your whole history, the other women, everything." Rachel took a deep breath, her hands still on her stomach. "Do what you need to do. I'm not going to hide anymore." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. While Catherine prepared the legal documentation, Michael coordinated with the press. The story was about to explode. James Bennett's pattern of abuse, the silenced women, Jennifer Parker's suspicious death. "The meeting is starting," Martin reported, checking his phone. "Bennett just presented the proposal to change the bylaws." Michael smiled. Showtime. In the lobby of the Bennett building, the press was already gathering. Michael, Rachel, and Catherine walked through the main doors under camera flashes. "Mr. Richardson, is it true that James Bennett tried to bribe a pregnant woman?" "Ms. Collins, do you have proof of the threats? Is there a connection with Jennifer Parker's death?" Catherine took control, her voice clear and professional. "We'll make a full statement soon. For now, we're here to stop an illegal attempt to change the company's bylaws." On the 30th floor, the boardroom was buzzing. James Bennett, standing at the head of the table, visibly paled when the group entered. "This is a private meeting," he began, but Martin interrupted him. "In fact, according to the original 1975 statute, any attempt to change the rules of succession requires the presence of all potential heirs." Martin laid the yellow document on the table, including unborn children with proven paternity. A murmur went through the room. Bennett tried to keep his composure, but his hands were shaking slightly. "That's ridiculous. That clause has been removed, illegally," Catherine added. "And we have proof of that too." Michael watched as the house of cards Bennett had built began to crumble. The news about Jennifer Parker was already circulating on the counselors' smartphones, along with excerpts from the strategically leaked recordings. "James," Bennett's younger brother finally spoke up, "what the hell have you done?" The next hour was an unfolding of revelations and consequences. While Catherine presented the evidence, Michael kept close to Rachel, noting how she faced everything with surprising dignity. "This ends today," Rachel declared when she finally had the chance to speak. "Not for revenge, but for justice. For Jennifer, for all the others, and for my son who, yes, is a Bennett, whether you like it or not, James." The board voted unanimously to immediately suspend James Bennett from his executive duties, pending a full investigation. As they left the room, Rachel took Michael's arm. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Michael smiled, feeling that familiar sense of purpose fill his chest. "It's not over yet, but you're safe now. You both are." As they rode down the elevator, Catherine was already organizing the next steps. The press would be waiting, investigations would be opened, statements would need to be taken. But for now, there was a sense of victory in the air. "You know," Rachel commented softly, "when I found out I was pregnant, I thought it would be the end of the world. Now I realize it was just the beginning of something new." Michael nodded, remembering his mother's words about how sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges. Looking at Rachel, at her strength and dignity, he understood that he was witnessing exactly that. The elevator doors opened to a new chapter in everyone's lives. The main battle may have been won, but the journey was far from over. And somehow, that was exactly as it should be. 2 weeks after the confrontation at Bennett Technologies, life was beginning to find a new rhythm. Rachel was flourishing in her role at Richardson Investments, while the investigations into James Bennett continued to unfold, revealing more and more layers of manipulation and abuse of power. Michael watched these changes from his penthouse office, but something had changed in his own routine. More and more, he found himself looking for reasons to stop by the marketing department, to have lunch with Rachel, to simply be there. "Mr. Richardson," Patricia entered his office with her usual discretion. "Catherine Martinez is on line 1. It sounds urgent." Michael answered immediately. "Catherine, is there a problem?" "Not exactly." The lawyer's voice sounded puzzled. "I've just had an interesting visitor. Elizabeth Bennett, James' mother." Michael straightened up in his chair. Elizabeth Bennett had been known for her reclusiveness since the death of her husband, William, 5 years ago. What did she want? "She wants to meet Rachel, and with you." The news took Michael by surprise. "What's her angle?" "Honestly, I think it's genuine. Elizabeth brought something. Well, you need to see for yourself. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" After hanging up, Michael went personally to the marketing department to speak to Rachel. He found her in her office, reviewing digital campaigns with her team. "Rachel," he called softly from the doorway, "can we talk?" She looked up, and Michael noticed how her face lit up subtly. It was something he had been noticing more and more over the last few days. In the hallway, he explained about Elizabeth Bennett. Rachel listened intently, her hands instinctively protecting her 8-month-old belly. "Do you think it's safe?" she asked. "Catherine will be there, and I won't leave your side." Rachel smiled, a gesture that made something inside Michael stir. "You never leave." In Catherine's office, Elizabeth Bennett was waiting for them. She was an elegant woman in her 60s, with the same blue eyes as James, but carrying a kindness that her son had never shown. "Rachel," Elizabeth stood up when she saw them. "You're exactly as Jennifer described you." "Jennifer?" Rachel asked in surprise. Elizabeth nodded, taking an envelope out of her bag. "Jennifer Parker was my confidant for the last few years. She told me everything about James, about what he was doing. I failed to stop him before." Michael watched as Elizabeth opened the envelope, revealing letters and photographs. "Before she died, Jennifer sent me these. It's all evidence, not just of recent cases, but of a pattern that began 15 years ago." Catherine took the documents, her professional eyes quickly assessing their contents. "That's significant. But why now?" Michael asked, his cautious nature still present. Elizabeth turned to Rachel, tears in her eyes. "Because I can't allow any more lives to be destroyed. Jennifer, her death was no accident, and I can no longer pretend not to know what my son has become." Rachel reached for Elizabeth's hand instinctively. "You're not responsible for his actions. But I am responsible for keeping silent for so long," Elizabeth replied. "William, my husband, tried to control James through that will, but it only made him more obsessed with power and control." Michael watched the interaction, noticing how Rachel, even after everything she had been through, still managed to show compassion. It was one of the many qualities that had captivated him over the last few weeks. "There's one more thing," Elizabeth continued, pulling a small diary out of her bag. This was William's. His last notes? He was planning to change his will. He was worried about James' behavior. He wanted to protect the company from his obsession with control. Catherine flipped through the diary quickly. This changes everything. If William was of sound mind when he wrote this, he was, Elizabeth confirmed. I have medical reports from the time. And witnesses. Michael realized the implications immediately. This not only protects Rachel and the baby, but could effectively remove James from control of the company. It's not about revenge, Elizabeth said softly. It's about justice, and about protecting the future not just of the company, but of this child. Rachel, who had remained silent, absorbing everything, finally spoke up. What happens now? Now, Catherine replied, we prepare an even stronger case. With this evidence in Elizabeth's testimony, Michael noticed Rachel pale slightly. Are you all right? Just a bit overwhelmed, she admitted. Elizabeth approached, her face softening with maternal concern. Darling, you need to rest. All this stress isn't good for the baby. She's right, Michael agreed, surprised at the very protectiveness he felt. Let's call it a night. As they said goodbye, Elizabeth took Rachel's hand once more. I'd like to be a part of my grandson's life, if you allow it. Rachel looked at Michael, as if seeking guidance, before replying, of course. He or she deserves to know the good side of the Bennett family. In the elevator, descending from Catherine's office, Michael noticed that Rachel was unusually quiet. $1 for your thoughts, he teased gently. It's strange, she replied, a small smile on her lips. When it all started, I felt like I was losing a family. Now, somehow, I seem to be gaining one, albeit in unexpected ways. Michael felt his heart speed up slightly. Family isn't always about blood. No, she agreed, her eyes meeting his. Sometimes it's about people who choose to stay by our side, no matter what. The elevator reached the first floor, but they both hesitated before getting out. There was something in the air, a mutual understanding that had been growing for weeks. Rachel, Michael began, but was interrupted by her phone. It's my doctor, she explained, checking the message. Scheduling the last ultrasound before delivery. Michael nodded, the moment broken but not lost. Would you like some company? Her smile was answer enough. As they walked to the car, Michael reflected on how life had curious ways of giving us exactly what we needed, even when we didn't know we were looking for it. The doctor's appointment for the last ultrasound before the birth turned into a more meaningful moment than Michael could have imagined. Sitting next to Rachel in the clinic waiting room, he found himself studying the other couples present, expectant parents holding hands, sharing nervous smiles, living the experience together. Miss Collins, the nurse called out, and Rachel stood up with some difficulty. Michael immediately offered support, his hand naturally finding her lower back. You don't have to stay, Rachel said softly. I know you have important meetings today. Nothing is more important than this, he replied, surprising himself with the absolute truth of that statement. Dr. Martinez, a middle-aged obstetrician with kind eyes, welcomed them with a knowing smile. Rachel, I see you've brought company this time. This is Michael, Rachel introduced, a slight blush tinging her cheeks. He's been everything to me these past few months. The scam began, and Michael found himself fascinated by the black and white image on the screen. The baby was perfectly positioned, its gentle movements causing ripples in the image. Do you want to know the sex? The doctor asked. At the last few appointments you preferred to keep it a surprise, but now, Rachel looked at Michael, as if seeking his opinion. He squeezed her hand gently. It's up to you. I want to know, she decided, a nervous smile on her lips. It's a girl, Dr. Martinez announced, and she's in perfect condition. Michael felt something in his chest expand, an emotion he couldn't name. Rachel squeezed his hand, silent tears streaming down her face. A girl, she whispered. Michael, it's a girl. Back in the car, the silence between them was charged with unspoken emotion. Michael drove slowly, aware of how his life had changed completely since that rainy afternoon in front of the courthouse. What are you thinking about? Rachel asked softly. About how sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as challenges, he replied, remembering his mother's words. Rachel, his phone interrupted the moment. It was Catherine. Michael activated the speakerphone. Michael, Rachel, you need to come to my office immediately. James Bennett has just made a move that no one expected. In Catherine's office, they found not only the lawyer, but also Elizabeth Bennett and Martin Chun. The tension in the air was palpable. James is offering a settlement, Catherine announced without preamble. He renounces any rights to the child and removes himself completely from the management of Bennett Technologies. What's the catch? Michael asked, his business instincts warning of pitfalls. He wants immunity, Martin explained, both in corporate matters and, well, in Jennifer Parker's death. Rachel paled, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. He's admitting, indirectly, Catherine added. It's a veiled confession. Elizabeth Bennett looked years older, the weight of her son's actions evident on her face. I should have seen the signs before. I should have done something. We can't accept it, Michael declared firmly. He needs to answer for his crimes. But if we don't accept it, Rachel mused, he can keep fighting, causing trouble. It's your decision, Rachel, Catherine said softly. Legally, we have a strong case. The evidence Elizabeth brought, along with the other testimonies. But it would never really be over, Rachel completed the thought. He would always find a way to interfere, to cause trouble. Michael watched as Rachel processed the situation, admiring her strength even in the face of impossible decisions. I want my daughter to grow up in peace, she finally declared, without shadows, without constant threats. Your daughter? Elizabeth asked, tears in her eyes. Rachel smiled softly. Yes, we found out today. It's a girl. The emotional moment was interrupted by Martin. We need a decision. Bennett has given us until tomorrow. I'll take the deal, Rachel decided, but with conditions. I want written guarantees. I want him to leave the country. I want complete protection, Michael added, both legal and financial. And I want part of the shares in Bennett Technologies to be placed in a trust fund for the child. Catherine began to take notes, while Martin discussed the technical details. Elizabeth watched with a mixture of sadness and relief. Rachel, the Bennett matriarch, called softly, Can I still be part of her life, even after everything? Rachel reached for Elizabeth's hand. Of course, she deserves to know the good part of her inheritance. Hours later, Michael drove Rachel back home. The sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Do you think I made the right choice? Rachel asked, breaking the silence. I think you made a mother's choice, Michael replied. Protecting your daughter, securing your future. Our future, Rachel corrected softly, and then blushed. I mean, you've been so important in all of this. Michael parked the car, turning to face her. Rachel, I need to tell you something. Something I've been feeling for weeks, but maybe I'm afraid to admit. Michael, let me finish, he asked gently. When I found you on that staircase, I was looking for something I didn't even know I needed. And now I can't imagine my life without you. Without both of you. Rachel looked at him, tears shining in her blue eyes. I can't imagine our life without you either. The moment was interrupted by a strong kick from the baby, making Rachel laugh through her tears. She took Michael's hand and placed it on her belly, allowing him to feel his daughter's movements. I think she's approving, Rachel smiled. Michael felt his heart expand with an emotion he now clearly recognized. Love, not just for Rachel, but for the little life he already considered part of himself. The future still held challenges, but now they would face them together, not as broken people looking for a fix, but as a family choosing to build something new and beautiful from the pieces life had given them. The following weeks brought a new routine for Michael and Rachel. With James Bennett's situation resolved through the legal agreement, they could finally focus on what really mattered: the baby's arrival, which was due in 3 weeks' time. Michael had transformed one of the rooms in his apartment into a nursery, surprising Rachel with a design that mixed soft shades of aqua green and gold. The walls boasted a delicate mural of trees and birds, and an old, restored rocking chair occupied the corner by the window. It was my mother's, Michael explained when he showed Rachel the room for the first time. She used to rock me in it every night. Rachel ran her fingers through the soft fabric of the armchair, silent tears streaming down her face. It's perfect, Michael. It's all perfect. Rachel's move into Michael's apartment came naturally, without much discussion or planning. It started with a few extra clothes, then her favorite books, and before they knew it, they were living together, creating their own routine. Elizabeth Bennet became a constant presence in their lives, bringing not only gifts for the baby, but family stories and traditions that Rachel welcomed with gratitude. The Bennet matriarch seemed to blossom in her new role, as if the chance to be a grandmother was also her own redemption. "I found this in the attic," Elizabeth said one afternoon, handing Rachel a small old music box. "It was mine as a child, then it was James, and now, well, now it must be hers." The soft melody filled the room as a porcelain ballerina twirled delicately. Rachel held Elizabeth's hand, sharing a moment of silent understanding about how life sometimes offers us second chances across the generations. Michael watched these interactions with a mixture of admiration and protectiveness. His relationship with Rachel had evolved into something deep and meaningful, built on mutual trust and an understanding that went beyond words. One evening, as they worked late in their home office, Rachel finalizing a digital campaign and Michael reviewing contracts, he caught her watching him with a pensive expression. "What is it?" he asked, removing his reading glasses. "I was thinking of names," she replied, stroking her belly. "For the baby?" Michael felt his heart racing. They hadn't discussed names yet, as if they were waiting for the right moment. "Do you have any ideas?" "Actually, yes." Rachel bit her lip, hesitantly. "I was thinking of Rose." The name hit Michael like a wave of emotion. "Rose, like my mother?" Rachel nodded. "You talk about her so much, how much she meant to you. And somehow, I feel that she brought us together. If it hadn't been for that special date, you might not have stopped to help me up that ladder." Michael rose from his chair, crossing the room to kneel beside Rachel. "It's perfect," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Rose Richardson Collins? Or maybe—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to suggest. Rachel took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Maybe what?" "Rachel," Michael began, his heart hammering in his chest. "I know that everything happened in an unconventional way between us, that we met in difficult circumstances and that maybe it's too soon. But it's not too soon," she interrupted gently. "In fact, it feels like we've been waiting a lifetime for this." Michael smiled, recognizing the truth in her words. "Marry me. Not because we have to, not because of the baby, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Without both of you." Rachel pulled him closer, tears shining in her blue eyes. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. The moment was interrupted by a strong kick from the baby, making them both laugh. "I think Rose approves," Rachel smiled. "Rose Richardson." Michael tested the name, feeling its meaning. "My mother would be honored." That night, lying in bed, Michael watched Rachel sleep, his hand resting protectively on the belly where his daughter was growing. Life had changed so much in such a short time, and yet everything seemed to be exactly as it should be. Her phone vibrated silently with a message from Catherine. Agreement with Bennet finalized. "He leaves the country tomorrow. Everything is secured." Michael replied with a simple thank you, knowing that that chapter of their lives was finally closed. The future that lay ahead was bright with possibilities, no longer obscured by threats or fears. Rachel shifted in her sleep, mumbling something unintelligible. Michael pulled her closer, feeling the comforting warmth of her body against his. In 3 weeks, his daughter would be born, and his family, the one he never knew he needed until he met Rachel, would be complete. "I love you," he whispered in the dark, the words carrying the weight of all the promises he intended to keep, of all the future they would build together. Rachel smiled in her sleep, as if even unconsciously she could feel the love that enveloped them. And maybe she could, Michael thought, because some feelings are too strong to be contained in words or gestures alone. They simply exist, filling every empty space, healing every old wound, building bridges over all the chasms that once seemed insurmountable. The October dawn in Manhattan brought with it a gentle breeze that carried the last leaves of fall. Exactly 1 year had passed since that fateful encounter on the courthouse steps, and Michael Richardson's life had been transformed in ways he had never imagined possible. Rose Elizabeth Richardson was born on a quiet summer's evening, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. As if she was eager to meet the world that awaited her, Michael still vividly remembered the moment when he held his daughter for the first time. Those blue eyes, identical to Rachel's, that seemed to carry all the wisdom in the universe. "She has your chin," Rachel had said, exhausted but radiant in the hospital bed. "And definitely her stubbornness." Now, sitting in his office at Richardson Investments, Michael looked at the photographs that decorated his desk, captured moments from the last few months that told the story of his newly formed family. Rose at 3 days old, asleep on Rachel's chest. Rose at 2 months old, smiling for the first time in the old armchair that had belonged to her grandmother. Rose with Elizabeth Bennet, who had become the devoted grandmother she had always dreamed of being. "Mr. Richardson?" Patricia interrupted her thoughts. "Rachel is here with little Rose." Michael smiled as he saw his family enter the office. Rachel, even more beautiful than the day he had met her, was carrying Rose, who had just turned 3 months old. The baby was wearing a water green dress that matched the nursery's decor. "Ready for today?" Rachel asked, handing Rose into Michael's eager arms. Today was a special day. The wedding ceremony would be held in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, an intimate event with only the closest people. Catherine Martinez, who had become more than a lawyer for the family, would be one of the bridesmaids. "Almost there," Michael replied, kissing his daughter's forehead. "I just need to sign some important documents first." Rachel approached his desk, curious. "What documents?" Michael passed Rose back to her and picked up a folder. "Well, first, the official papers transferring 30% of the shares in Richardson Investments to a trust in Rose's name." "Michael, in second," he continued, picking up another document. "The official paperwork changing the name of the company to Richardson and Collins Investments." Rachel blinked in surprise. You're making me a partner?" "Partner," he corrected softly. "In everything. You've revolutionized our marketing department in just a few months. The digital campaign you developed tripled our visibility. But more than that," he stood up, moving closer to his family, "you changed everything. You gave purpose to it all." Rose chose that moment to let out one of her infectious laughs, as if she understood the importance of the moment. Rachel was trying to hold back tears, conscious of the makeup she had already done for the ceremony. "I still can't believe that in a few hours we'll officially be a family," she whispered. "We're already a family," Michael replied, hugging them. "Paper only makes official what our hearts already know." The afternoon in the botanical garden was perfect. Elizabeth Bennet walked with Rachel down the makeshift aisle among the flowers, while Catherine carried Rose, who surprisingly remained quiet throughout the ceremony, as if she understood the solemnity of the moment. During the vows, Michael spoke about fated encounters and second chances. Rachel, for her part, talked about how sometimes we need to lose ourselves completely in order to find our true way home. "A year ago," Michael said in his speech during the reception, "I was a man who had everything and nothing at the same time. I had success, I had wealth, but I had no purpose. I had no love." He looked at Rachel, who was holding a sleeping Rose in her arms. Then, one rainy afternoon, the universe conspired to show me that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as challenges. Rachel, you and Rose not only filled a void in my life, you gave me a reason to be a better person. Elizabeth Bennet, who had become a constant and loving presence in their lives, raised her glass. "To family," she proposed. "Not just the one we were born into, but especially the one we chose to build." Later, as night fell over New York, Michael and Rachel danced softly under the decorative garden lights. Rose was sleeping peacefully in Elizabeth's arms, watching her with infinite love. "You know," Rachel murmured against Michael's chest, "when I was on those courthouse steps, crying in the rain, I thought it was the end of the world." "It was," Michael replied, kissing her hair. "It was the end of an old world, so that we could build a new one, together." The soft sound of the music mingled with the night breeze, carrying with it the promises of a future that neither of them could have imagined a year ago. Old wounds had turned into learning scars, and the fears of the past had given way to the certainty of present love. James Bennet had left the country, fulfilling his part of the bargain, but his legacy remained transformed through Rose, not as a story of power and control, but as a reminder of how love can flourish even in the most unlikely of terrains. "Where are we going now?" Rachel asked softly, raising her face to meet her husband's eyes. Michael smiled, that smile he had learned to show again thanks to her. "Wherever we want. We have all the time in the world." And there, under the Manhattan stars, surrounded by the love of their chosen family, Michael and Rachel Richardson sealed not only their marriage, but the promise of a future built on the strongest foundations there are: love, trust, and the certainty that sometimes life's greatest miracles begin with a simple act of kindness on a rainy afternoon. Rose wriggled in Elizabeth's arms, letting out a little satisfied sigh, as if she too knew that her story, the one that began even before her birth, was living proof that love, in its purest and most unexpected forms, has the power to transform not just lives, but entire generations.